Hey there guys, welcome back to chapter 2 of the Forgemaster Masterclass. So the first chapter we came up with a concept, we've started extracting the bits and pieces that we need. So in this chapter we're going to finish adding, well, pretty much everything else to it. So we're going to start refining things after we've got everything in place, and we'll see where that takes us up to. Hopefully we can get a lot done in this chapter. So, first of all, we want to add the apron in. So if we head to just put see-through mode back on, we can have a look at our original concept. So we need to put the apron in, and we're going to be constructing this out of different parts. First of all, I'm going to be creating it using Dynamesh, and then we'll tidy it up with the Retopology tools. And we'll start adding in a few different elements. I'm more than likely going to embellish a bit as we go. So I'm going to add a few layers and patches of repairs, possibly maybe even a little sort of tool pouch or something to it, some pockets. So it's frequently what I do. I plan out the bulk of what it is that I want to do, and get the general idea. So in this case I'm going to be doing a Viking Forgemaster. It's going to be making weapons, armor, all that sort of thing, all the good stuff. So then as I'm actually sculpting, I will start adding bits and pieces, so just to sort of embellish it as we go. So we've largely got most of the form in here, muscles and such like that. Everything does need a little bit tidying up, especially on the arms where it's a little bit lumpy. But at the moment we're just going to focus on getting the actual bits and pieces done. So I did get a request to show how Shadowbox works, but to be honest, Shadowbox is completely outmoded now that we have Dynamesh. It works on a similar principle. If I just quickly show you that, actually, let's just load in a sphere. And we'll go to Geometry, Shadowbox. We can choose a resolution for our Shadowbox, so I'm going to choose 256, and I'm going to press Shadowbox. So what this does is it adds 3 planes. You've got one on the back, one on the side, one on the bottom, and you've got these masked off areas which create the shape that we're really looking for. So I could do the apron. We can hold down Control and drag and remove the masking from the planes. Sorry, there's a laboured sentence there. Been a while since I used Shadowbox, as I say, it's been completely outmoded now that we have Dynamesh. But the way that it works, we can turn on symmetry, is you can draw out your shape using a mask. So if I hold down Control, so let's just kind of draw out the shape of an apron. So just very, very basically. Let's fill that all in. That'll create a very basic shape. If we turn on transparency, so we can actually see through it, we can then go on to the next section and sort of paint the kind of profile that we want it to follow. It's extremely thick, so let's just thin that down. Remember, hold Control and Alt to remove your mask. And then from here we can, or we should, be able to draw in sort of around the arms, and then sort of bring in a section here so that everything all links up. You can see it's kind of given us a bit of a base, and we can carry on drawing around here to kind of get a profile on this bit. So obviously we want it to have a hole in the center where the dude fits in. So this doesn't match up completely perfectly. I'm trying to figure out where that's going wrong. It's going to be this section here, so it doesn't come back far enough for the arms to meet up. And can you already see the sort of the drawbacks of using Shadowbox It's great for sort of getting a base idea of what it is you want to do. But overall, sort of controlling it in a very geometric kind of fashion doesn't always work out that well. Let's just go ahead and remove this back section here. So have something that looks rather apron-like, a bit thick in places. Let's turn off transparency. So you can kind of see that we've got a shape there. This is really helpful when coming up with like mechanical pieces. And I might actually use Shadowbox to create some tools later on, which I might stick in a pouch on the apron. But if we turn off Shadowbox now, we have something that looks like this. Now if this looks rather familiar, it's because it looks very much like Dynamesh. So what Dynamesh does is basically project on the polygon edge flow using exactly the same sort of idea that Shadowbox does. Now obviously this is far beyond what we actually want it to look like, so we'd really have to go in and do some work on this using the clipping brushes and smoothing things down and stuff like that. And personally, I can never really be bothered to do that. It's a lot of work for something which is sort of completely outmoded. So that the way I'm going to actually do this now is by using Dynamesh. I'm going to create a new Polysphere 3D. So go to the Tools menu and choose a sphere, and then press Make Polymesh 3D. We'll jump back to our original guy, go to our Subtools menu, go into Append, and press PM3D. That's going to give us our sphere. Just going to shrink this down. So there we go, deformation, and we're going to reduce the size of it so we can start working with it. Now what I tend to do is when I have to create clothing that sort of wraps around and has very little thickness to it, I tend to use Dynamesh to get the general form, and then I'll retopologize over the top of it to get the kind of shape that we need. So I'm going to turn on Dynamesh. You can see we've got a resolution setting as well, so I'm going to set that to 256. And then I'm going to press turn off project and press Dynamesh, and that's going to give us our it looks like a giant baby at the moment with some sort of strange diaper, but let's activate symmetry. I'm going to use the move tool, the move brush, to sort of give us a base to follow. So this obviously isn't going to be hollow for the time being. However, that's not the point of this. This is just acting as a base so that we can sculpt on it. Or retopologize. So the main thing to do is to get it to cover the surface area that we actually want the apron to cover, and we'll tidy that up a little bit later on. So this is just one way of doing it. There are multiple ways. You could always go and create it in something like 3D Max or Maya. For the purpose of this, I'm doing this inside ZBrush because at the moment we're not at the stage where I want to take it outside of ZBrush yet. So let's just figure out how we're going to get this on our guy. I think he's going to end up with some straps around there. Let's have a look at our concept. So it kind of comes down to his mid-chest. So I think probably the beard's a little bit too long there, so just underneath the beard. I want to take this side down because we don't need that there. So as you can probably tell what I'm doing now, if you followed my hard surface modeling tutorial, there were points at where I took the original mesh and flattened it down to below the surface of my actual mesh to sort of remove it from view. And it's very much the same kind of thing that I'm doing here. I'm putting the bits that we don't want to see inside the mesh and leaving the bits that we do want to see outside the mesh. So I'm just using the clay build tool now because clay build brush. It's one of my favourite tools. I find it really helpful, just because it can displace a large area. It has a fairly flat feel to it. And using the move brush just to move things into the right position. So this part is probably the most laborious. However, this will give us a much better result than using shadow box. So I'll probably do a quick tutorial on shadow box, as it still has a use, mostly for architectural kind of things, and hard-edged mechanical pieces. I can't create a full mesh or something from it, but I do use it every so often to create some components, though I am using it less and less these days as I get more and more out of Dynamesh. So the amount of things you can do with it is pretty impressive. So we've got the sort of upper part of the apron in, got these straps on the shoulders. That goes round onto his back. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, because we're going to be retopoing this and sorting a few other things out as we go. So don't spend too long. It'll give us an idea of the shape. It'll give us something to trace through when we retopologize it, and that's the main thing. The main thing is to try and get the volume right. So you can get some pretty useful images, like blacksmithing aprons. One sec, I'll just bring one over. So a quick Google image search for a bit of reference. Something like this. So the whole idea is that it wraps around the full front and a little bit around the back as well. So we're going to be mimicking that sort of setup and that kind of shape. There are a whole bunch of different references, some of which are from games, some of which are historical, and some of which are kind of fantastic and a bit over the top. So the kind of thing that I'm going for is something similar to this. So we have part at the front which comes up, you've got a strap which will go around the neck, and you have these two parts which will wrap around the back and tie up in the front, or around the back depending on how lazy the person is or how fat they are. And you can see we've got these pockets and sort of tool storage sections here, so we'll be doing something like that as well. So get your reference, as it'll make sure that you've got everything right in your head, and get a good idea of what it is that you actually want to do. So this is largely pretty much what we need. Looks fine from the front. Just going to hold shift and smooth down. And this is going to be where we want the sort of the back tie, the back sort of tie section. So we can remove that, or at least hint at where it is. So this will wrap around the back here. So again, this is going to look like some sort of hideous mess, but it'll all make sense in a few moments. So let's just kind of give that a bit of a shape so we can tell where the edges end. So that's great. Let's hold down Control and Shift to select our trim curve brush, and we're just going to flatten off the edge there. So the trim curve, it will actually delete any of the topology below the gradated edge. So you see we've got this gradient here, and from there you can actually see that it's going to cut off in this sort of shaded grey section. It'll then fill that section with triangles, so that it's got a base to it. So that's how we can chop up the Dynamesh. Probably do some more of that later on when we're making the tools. This is largely all we need. So in order to make it easier for us, what we're actually going to do now is we're going to duplicate the apron. So go to Subtools and hit Duplicate. Going to move that up to the top of the list so it's easy to find. So that's our duplicate, and we're going to hide the original. We're also going to duplicate the upper torso, so I'm going to duplicate that as well. I'm going to hide the original and move that up to the top. And then I'm going to go to Merge and press Merge Down. Press OK. And that's going to make this a single subtool. So if we move something, it'll sculpt on both sections. The reason I've done that is because we need to use the body as a bit of a template, as well as the template we've created with the Dynamesh. So let's go ahead and jump over to a Z-sphere. If we click on our tool, we can choose Z-sphere. We can then go to our rigging option, click Select Mesh, and we'll select our upper torso 1, which has the apron attached to it as well. So you can see it's going to be a bit of a mess, but it doesn't matter for this reason. If we click on Topology and press Edit Topology, we're now going to create some clean topology from our mesh. So we're going to go into Transform, hit Activate Symmetry. Now if you followed my hard surface modeling tutorial, then you're going to know how the Retopology tool works for those just watching this one. The Retopology tool will create geometry over a base mesh, which is what this is here, grayed out, and it'll stick to the surface of whatever we click on. So let's just make sure symmetry is turned on first of all, which it is. So all you need to do is just click on the surface of your mesh. Excuse me while I just unscrew that up. Click on your mesh and that will put down a vertex. Clicking on another point will create another vertex and create an edge between it. And what we want to do is just join these edges up. So if you press Shift, you're able to select a vertex with which to draw from. So I want to create an edge from this point to a new point that I create. So I press Shift and click on the vertex that I want to create it from. Then I just click down. Sorry, I think it's Control actually. Yeah, press Control and then click on the vertex. And then we're just going to join them up. Now what this does is it creates a polygon, and we're going to use this method to trace the shape of our apron. It'll create the hollow inside where the guy's got to fit in, and it'll give us some nice clean geometry to sculpt on. So I'm just going to draw out some dots, which is going to be our strap. We don't have to stick perfectly to our form, as we can edit it later. And we'll just join those dots. Now if you press A on the keyboard, you're going to see the result of what we've just done. Hit A again to turn it off. We actually want to click on Adaptive Skin and turn the density down to 1, and that will show us a 1-to-1 of what we've just created. As if you turn the density up, it actually increases the number of subdivisions we've done. So we'll just leave that as it is for now. And we're just going to go through and create this apron. So hold down Control, click on a vertex to select it, and draw from there. We'll meet up in the middle. So I try to keep the polygons reasonably well spaced. This is going to be something completely different to when we retopologize for the actual game engine. The reason we want to keep them equal and well spread out is because when we subdivide them, we'll be able to put in the same amount of detail over the entire mesh. So you can click on Move, and we'll be able to move our vertexes. Go back to draw mode to start drawing them back out. Press Ctrl to click on a vertex and carry on creating from there. And just carry on creating your points all the way around. I think we'll just move these ones out because they're a little bit too close. I wish there was a way of increasing the thickness and visibility of these vertexes and edges. I don't think there is. I've never come across the option, but it would be handy, as sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to see what you're doing even when you do zoom right in. So let's just carry on our edge flow around here. And when you're doing topology, sometimes things can go a little bit wrong. If you click on another part of the mesh in order to rotate the camera, just hit undo and rotate using these the actual camera controls here, as sometimes it could be a little bit safer. So for these sections where we've got parts meeting up, you can always use triangles if you like, as ZBrush doesn't tend to mind triangles as much as it used to. But old habits die hard, and I try to keep everything quadded as much as possible. Reason being, when you subdivide a surface, you divide it by 4. Now, it doesn't take a genius to realise that you can't divide a triangle by 4, and you end up with quite an unpleasant looking edge. You get pinching and poles and stuff like that appearing, and it doesn't give a very nice surface to sculpt on. So I try to keep everything quadded because it gives the best results. Doesn't matter if they're slightly longer or elongated in places, but I try to keep them as evenly spaced as possible. And just enough to give the resolution that we need as well. We don't need to have, you know, hundreds of thousands of polygons to play with here, because that's the purpose of subdividing. It will give us the polygons we need. Though these are getting quite stretched around here, so I'm just going to even them up a bit. The main point is to keep them well spaced and fairly even. Keep the edge flow right as much as you can without it taking too long. If you already know how to do this, guys, then feel free to skip ahead. It doesn't take too long, but as I've vowed to do, I'm going to do as much as I can in real time, with the only real editing in the videos being interruptions and extremely long wait times while things render or load up or crash, and things like that. So anything which is important for the process, I am going to be filming in real time. So if you're getting bored, feel free to skip ahead if you already know all this. So one thing to note as well when it comes to speeding this process up, as it can be very tedious, you don't have to join all the edges up. ZBrush is intelligent to know that if you've got a strip of polygons like this, you've got multiple vertices down the side and it's connected at the bottom and at the top, it's intelligent enough to know that you want the rest of it joined up as well, except for this case. So what I can do is turn up max strip length, and that'll decide how many vertices it will actually join up along the way in a single strip of polygons. So you can control that, so you don't have to do quite so much. In fact, I'm going to do that for the most part. As long as the vertices line up and they have a connection point at the bottom, it will create most of it. Just got to join these two together. It does get rather hard to see where the vertices are. I think I missed one there. So just for ease of use, I'm going to start joining these vertices up so they don't do my head in so much. Remember, if you join things together, remember to select the vertex you want active, otherwise you'll get two lines drawn from the same point and that'll give us errors in our mesh. And once again, you can set the active vertex by holding down Control and clicking on the vertex that you want. So you can see I'm not putting in every single strip that I need, every single polygon that I need, as ZBrush can do that for us, and we might as well let it. I'm going to start tidying up some of these this polygon flow, as we're going to end up with a lot of strips down the front, so I'm just going to change the angle of some of these so that they come down a little bit more evenly and spreading out, so we don't have to do quite so much in the long run. So the main reason I'm putting these vertices in is because I can keep track of it better. As you can see, you don't need to put them all in, but you do get a few errors, and hopefully we can figure out what's causing it. We've got a vertex which isn't actually joined up. Well, it is, it's just joined to the wrong place. So let's zoom in, let's fix that. You can fix it by holding down Alt and clicking on a vertex, and that will remove the vertex that we put in. We can then hold down Control and click on an active vertex and then click along one of the edges, and I'll insert a new vertex along that edge. So let's start terminating some of these. I'm going to create a couple of diamonds to help change the edge flow and so it's a bit easier to link things up. You can use diamonds as changes of direction, as well as a way of terminating a certain edge flow, which will now be able to carry it on in a slightly different way. So we've used it to change the direction of these edge flows to carry on around rather than just come straight down. And that should help even up the surface a little bit more as well, as eventually we do want to stop this flow of polygons from coming down and around, and we want them side by side to come down. So as you can see, we're starting to straighten these up. Starting to come down more like a cylinder than something that flows, which is great because it's going to give us a nice surface to sculpt on, so I'll be able to put some nice texture on there. See, these are starting to get a little bit too long, so I'm just going to change the position of those using the transpose move tool, and we can change the flow of these as we go. So you can see I've converted that to a more obvious diamond, which will change the flow of the edge. So as you'll see, when we get onto the retopology stage to make it game resolution, we might use some elements in their raw form, but we'll probably also do some tweaking and change the edge flow to be a bit more game friendly. The edge flow that we're using at the moment is very high poly for a very large surface area which doesn't need all the polygons to actually represent it. So a lot of these polygons will be removed and replaced with large flat sections, and all the details will be put across using normal maps. And that's just part of the process of doing game resolution meshes. You want to use as few polygons as possible. You want to use the polygons in areas where it's going to make a difference to the silhouette of the character, and enable you to put the right amount of detail into various sections. So the face is always an important one. So you'd have a lot more polygons in the face, especially if it's to be animated and you're going to have character close-ups. And largely the upper body as well, as you notice those a lot more in games, especially during cutscenes and talking and things like that. So another way that you could have created this is by using the topology brush, which I'm going to go through a little bit later on to create a few other little bits and pieces. The reason I'm not using it for this is because I want to have very strict control over the edge flow. And sometimes the topology brush is a little bit hard to control and keep all the edges where you want, and you end up doing a lot more tidy up work afterwards, whereas I tend to prefer spending my time getting the polygon flow and the edge flow and the topology exactly how I need it, rather than making do with something and then tidying it up, as I know doing it like this is going to get the results that I want. So let's just bring up our concept again and see just how high we need this. So roughly about right. So we need to bring it down to just above where our sculpt actually ends, where our template actually ends. So I'm going to start putting a flow around here, so I've kind of got a base to work from. So just as a marker more than anything. And then I'm just going to come in and start joining up these edges as best I can. So I don't know how that works out, but definitely something going weird there. I think I've got a vertex, yeah, vertex around here. Wish they're a bit easier to see. That definitely didn't go right. Select that vertex and click in the center. Oh, really doesn't like that. So I'm going to delete this vertex. I'm going to control click on that one to select it. I'm going to join up these verts here, and I'm going to draw a new one down here to this point and join them up there. And just for the sake of my sanity, so I can keep track of all these vertexes, I'm going to join them up along the way. As I say, you don't have to. Save yourself time and miss out a few if you want. I'm definitely going to miss out a few here, probably every other one, to save me having to do them. It's handy to have some sort of reference as to where you can expect. And ZBrush decided to save while I was doing my topology. If that happens, click Edit Topology again, and I'll put you back to where it was. So ZBrush Quick Save, sometimes I disable Quick Save altogether while I'm doing this. However, I have had ZBrush crash while I've been retopologizing, and I've lost an hour's worth of retopo. Which isn't something that you want to do. Retopology is probably one of the most boring parts of modeling, especially when it comes to game characters, as you have to retopologize at least 90% of your character for the most part, just to make it a bit more game friendly. You could retopologize it very much like the game resolution inside ZBrush if you wanted. I advise against it because we're going to be wanting to sculpt detail on it, and we're going to end up with stretch details and a very uneven surface to sculpt on. So it won't make too much sense for you at the moment unless you've tried doing it before, but I will show you an example a bit later on. Okay, so we're getting there, guys. Not far off now. Spread these out a little bit more to get a bit more of a flow towards the bottom. Again, this isn't going to be massively pretty, but we will probably use the relax option under the deformations option a little bit later on to sort of smooth everything out a bit. If we were doing this in something like Maya or Topo Gun or Max, we do have relax options in there as well to help us sort of smooth the edge flow, which will give us much tidier results. But again, we've got the tools that we need to do this inside ZBrush, so we might as well just do it in here, which will save us exporting things and importing things and changing things, and yeah, you get the idea. So there we go, just creating the edge flows. And there's not really much more to say at this stage. I've gone through all the basics of using the topology tool. So there's not really much more to cover except for really what I'm doing. So I'm gonna quit rambling for a bit now. Let's just get this done. All of this is unnecessary. It's just once you get into the flow of it, you kind of just go with it. So you end up joining up vertices, even though you don't need to. So let's hit A and preview what we've got. So just need to join up a few more things around the back. Hit A again. So we just need to do this section up here. Hold down Control, click on the vertex that we want, and we'll finish creating this strap around the back. So as you can see, the Dynamesh has played its part. It's created a template for us to follow. It's also created a surface for us to create the geometry on. It's going to need some tweaking, but it's not going to need anything too massive. So let's have a look what we've got. So there we go. We have an apron. So happy with that. Once you're sorted with it, all you need to do now is just make Polymesh 3D. We're going to go back to our original guy. Going to go to Subtools, going to turn on the upper torso and select it and remove, hide our merged one. Then we're going to bring back our original Dynamesh sculpt. Then we'll press Append and we'll go with our Z-Sphere adaptive skin. There we go. So we brought that back. You can see that it's not far off the surface. It's going to need a little bit of tweaking. But at the moment it has absolutely no thickness to it whatsoever, so that's something we want to change. If we actually delete this, press OK, and go back to our retopology, so select the Z-Sphere from the options, turn off preview, and we'll go to adaptive skin. Sorry, not adaptive skin, I think it's under topology. Yep, that's it. And then we've got skin thickness. If we drag that down into the minus values and press A, you see that we actually get a thickness to this now. It's probably a little bit too thick. I'm just going to hit A again. And drag that down to 0.009, press A, get in there. Let's do 0.005. Press A to preview. It doesn't look like there's any thickness there, so 0.005, hit enter, and then press A. There we go. So that's going to do us for our thickness. We're going to probably smooth things out a little bit more anyway when we make it look a bit more ragged. And we'll sculpt some extra details in, like lifting this off the surface and such like that. So let's go ahead and press Make Polymesh 3D again. We'll go back to our original sculpt. Going to go to Subtools, Append, choose our PM3D Z-Sphere _1. Switch to that, and now we've got some thickness to it. So there we have our apron, although it looks a little bit more like a dress at the moment. So we can always fix that up. Just need to go about tweaking it. Let's turn on symmetry, or press X on the keyboard. And we can start moving this towards the surface beneath. And what I might do is go to Deformation, and I might just drag Relax. Nope, that's a little bit too high. So I'm going to put in 10. No, still too high. What's the maximum value? Right, let's try Relax 3. Nope. Okay, looks like we might need some subdivisions on there to make the relaxing work properly. That's okay, we'll make do with what we've got so far. Let's just move everything up into the correct positions where we want them. So, change the brush size down so you can tweak individual vertices if you need to. You can hit transparency so you can kind of see where the surface lies underneath. And we can start bringing it in so it's a little bit closer, so it looks like it's actually tied to his body rather than just placed around it. Now we can just kind of tweak the placement of the apron, drag it down a bit, sort of even off the bottom area so it's a bit flatter. You can actually just use Smooth a bit to kind of flatten things down and even out the spacing of the polygons. We don't want to smooth out the edges because we want to keep them quite sharp, which thankfully and rather kindly, if we take a look zoomed in, you can see that along these edges it's very faint, but we do have double lines by the looks of things. So that means that hopefully the edges are creased. So we'll find out by hitting Ctrl D to divide it. If we do it a number of times, we should find that the edges are still sharp, which means that the edges are still creased. If yours hasn't done this, I'm not sure why it wouldn't, because it's an automatic function, but just in case, I'll show you how to crease it. I go into this a lot more in depth in my hard surface tutorial, as it had a lot of things to crease in that. If we want to keep a hard edge on something, we have to crease it. When you subdivide something, generally you get the edges smoothed out because they're just being spaced out once you've had more polygons entered into the area. If we were doing this in 3D Max, the way that we would control it would be to add chamfered edges or bevels inside Maya. That adds more edges to the edges, to the corner, which means that the smoothing algorithm isn't going to smooth it out so much, being as though there are more polygons in that section, if that makes any kind of sense. ZBrush has a crease feature which basically adds a weight control to the corners, and we can actually use that. I'll demonstrate how we use it. We'll go into solo mode, and I'm going to go to crease and I'm going to press uncrease all, and now if we hit divide we'll see the effect it has. Everything gets a lot sharper, a lot softer. So if we turn that off and go to the edges, it's actually the kind of effect that we're going for, but not quite yet. because it doesn't give us much of a surface to sculpt things onto, or much of a thickness rather. So while that's kind of the overall effect we'll be going for a little bit later on, let's just undo it. Go back into solo mode and turn on polyframe. Polyframe is Shift C, and solo mode is located under the transform menu if you haven't already got it on your UI. So one way of doing this, so you'll notice that ZBrush has also assigned different polygroups to the different edges. Now that's going to be something that it will do automatically. I don't think I've ever seen an occasion where this hasn't been done. So we can really easily crease the edges that we want. So for instance, if we go to crease, we've got this option there called crease PG, which means crease by the polygroup border. So if there's a different polygroup between another polygroup, it will crease along those edges. So if we zoom in, press crease PG, and you'll see these double lines appearing on each of the polygroups. Now if we divide it, it'll smooth everything down but keep our thickness, which is kind of what we're after for the time being. We will remove the creases later when we need to smooth the edges, but that'll only be when we start adding detail. So we've got a little bit of a figure hugging. Let's just delete the higher resolution there. Got a bit figure hugging down towards the legs. Let's turn on transparency and just sort of widen that out, so it's less of a figure hugging apron and more of a manly blacksmithing one. So there we have it. So there's our apron, guys. That's all we need to work on. Got some nice edge flow around here where everything kind of links in before it starts coming down into a straight surface. So got a little bit spaced out towards the edges, but I don't think we'll be doing much there anyway. So it should give us a nice surface to sculpt on when it's subdivided. Now the next features we're going to be bringing out is these gloves. So we're going to alt click on the tool that we want to select, in this case is body. We're going to jump down the subdivision levels, so we're at the lowest subdivisions. And from here we're going to turn on polyframe so we can see what we're doing. And to create the gloves, we're going to extract it, and then we're going to make it a solid mesh, so we're not going to have it hollow. So first of all, let's figure out where we want the gloves to kind of come up to. So pretty big blacksmith mitts, so they go up to about halfway up the forearm. So around about here. Hold down Control Shift, click on our brush tool and select Slack Lasso. Oh, that's not what I wanted it to do. So yep, there we go. Just a bit of a glitch. Just release Control Shift and then we can drag out while holding it down, select where we want it to go to. Now you can see we've kind of roughly got it where we wanted. Just invert the mask, the hide, by Control Shift and dragging on the background. And now we'll do Control Shift Alt and drag out and select the bits that we want until we've got all the bits that we need. So Control Shift and drag on the background to invert the hidden selection. And you'll see that we've got his hands probably a little bit too much, so Control Shift Alt, set the edge flow that we don't need, get rid of that one. There we go. So here what we're going to do is extract some gloves. So we're going to go to Subtool, going to go to Extract, Extract, not Project, and then we're actually going to press Extract. And that smooth things out. We actually don't want it smooth, so we're going to turn the smoothness all the way down. Press Extract, and that's given us pretty much a one-to-one copy of the glove, of his hand, but in glove form. So that's all good. So what we're going to do now is, actually that's a good thickness, so we're going to press Accept. None of the fingers are clipping with each other, are they? No, there's a bit of a gap there, so should be okay, maybe not. Right, let's just delete the extract So select the extract and press delete. Okay, go back to the upper torso. We'll turn the thickness down a little bit more, so 0.005 I think. Press extract. It's just this pinky which is getting in the way. So that's fine, doesn't overlap too much. We'll press accept. And what we're going to do now is select the extract. We're going to go into solo mode. Going to go to transform and activate symmetry, and we're just going to move that pinky just so that when we're creating the game resolution mesh, we can actually get in there and retopologize it. So I'm going to hold down Control Shift and just click on that polygroup to select it. I don't know if it's selected the other one as well. That doesn't matter, we'll mirror it. So that's got the pinky. So Control Shift, click on the polygroup. Hiding polygroups will only work if you've got polyframe turned on by pressing Shift and F. What I'm going to do now is just drag a mask around this section. I'm going to unhide everything, and I'm going to Control and click on the background to invert the mask. I'm going to grab the Rotate tool from the Transpose Tools menu, drag out a pivot point around there. I'm just going to rotate that out. Doesn't matter about the original hand underneath, we're not actually going to be using it anymore. But just so it's spread out and we can kind of see that it's a different digit and it's not all linked up. So we'll remove the mask, click back on draw. We're going to go to the upper torso. We're then going to hold down Control, Shift and Alt and drag out a selection around the last edge loop to hide that. We're going to then invert it. In fact, is that even on both sides? Yes. We're going to Control, Shift, drag to invert. We're then going to go to Geometry. We're going to click on Modify Topology, and we're going to press Delete Hidden. And that's going to delete his hands. Now we've got these holes in the mesh. We're then going to press Close Holes. So actually we're not, because can't do it with multiple subdivision levels. So what we're going to do first of all, I'm just going to this is so we actually have a tidy mesh to work with, and we don't have to worry about holes in the mesh. We can duplicate the upper torso. I'm going to hide the original, and then going to go to Geometry and press Delete Higher Res. Then I'm going to press Close Holes, so that's going to close off the holes for us, which makes sense. I'm then going to hold down Control Shift and click on these sections. And I'm going to drag a mask around it. So hold down Control, drag a mask. If we've got symmetry on, we'll do both sides. And then going to Control Shift, click on the background to unhide it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the subdivisions and put it back up to the same resolution as the original upper torso, which I believe had 3 subdivision levels. Yes. And we're going to reproject the detail that we had back onto it. So we're going to uncheck everything that we don't need. If you've got visibility turned on a single tool that you have selected, you can actually turn everything on and off just by clicking that one. So we're going to turn everything off. We're going to turn on the original body underneath and the new body with the closed holes over the top, and we're going to reproject the details. So we don't need to do anything with the first subdivision level, but if we divide this, so if we go to Geometry, press Divide, we've got it masked, so these areas are not going to be subdivided. In fact, it's a bad thing. Let's just remove the mask first of all. We're going to press Subdivide. We're then going to go to the original torso, jump up to the same subdivision level, so we go to subdivision level 2, then go to our new torso with the closed holes, and we're then going to come down to project, and we're going to press project all. Now what that'll do is it will look at all of the visible meshes below the one you have selected, and it will project the form from the mesh below it onto the one that we have selected. So you see that the detail is starting to come back now, as those are details which are on subdivision levels that we deleted. So jump down to the original, press geometry and put the res back up. We'll go to subtool, select our new one. We'll then divide it to the same subdivision level, go back to subtool again, and then press project all. And that will make sure that we got all of our details projected onto it. We'll have a few errors around the edges because there was nothing to project onto, and the fact that it's got triangles there. But that's not going to be a big deal, as if we turn on our gloves, if we turn off solo mode first of all, the gloves come up past the point at where the mesh goes a little bit weird. So hope you followed that. It's not the easiest thing to describe, but hope you caught up with it. So let's turn off the original mesh. Let's find out why that finger's still there. Oh, that's why. Okay, something else to keep in mind. If we go into solo mode with the glove selected, we do have a hollow inside, and the hollow inside is going to also give a mirror image of what's inside it. So we've got the inside of the glove poking through the outside. Now that's no problem, because we're actually going to remove that. I'm going to turn on polyframe again. We're going to hide the outside, so hold down Control Shift and click on the poly group, and invert it, and once again hide that poly group, hide that one, nope, that was the inside, hide this one, hide this one, this one, and this one. So now what we see here is the inside of the glove, and what we actually want to do is completely remove that. So we're going to also take the rim, and I'm going to take this little section here as well. So I'm going to press Control Shift, hold down Alt, and I'm going to take this top section here. Then I'm going to invert the selection by Control Shift dragging. I'm going to go to Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden, and then I'm going to press Close Holes. I'm then going to press Mirror and Weld. Oops, one sec. So this is one thing which goes a little bit strange. If you're right-handed like me, you'll probably end up working on the right hand of your model more often than the left. So sometimes when we've been doing things with symmetry turned off, stuff like this will happen, where things will happen oddly on the other side. We can fix that by pressing Mirror and Weld. However, it will always mirror the left side over to the right side. So if we undo that, if we come down to Deformation, we press Mirror, which will switch the right side over to the left side. We can then go to Geometry and press Mirror and Weld, which will then mirror it back over. So there we have a glove. It's not hollow anymore, which means we have more polygons to play with on visible areas. And if we turn off solo mode, that enables us, thanks to that little indent that we have in here, to actually create an edge around it. So you get this nice little flare out. These are big chunky gloves. We can also turn on transparency, grab the clay build tool, brush rather, hold down Alt and just sculpt on the inside there, just to push the inside down a bit more. and we create depth inside the glove, which will then be mirrored in the texture and the normal maps. So let's see, yeah, we have had symmetry turned on now, so that's all good. So there we have our gloves. So the only thing to put in next is going to be our, let's just sort the rest out, so let's delete this original torso as we don't need it. We'll keep that original one. In fact, I'm going to put that all the way down the bottom so we don't get it confused with anything. It's a good idea now to start tidying things up. So we can remove the one which has the apron embedded in it. We've got our gloves. We've got our feet, which are soon to become our boots. We've got the trousers, the eyes outer, got the eyes colour, which again we're probably not going to use, so we're just going to delete those. We've got the floor, which we're not going to use. We've got the beard, which we're going to edit later on. And then we have the Dynamesh apron, which again we don't need anymore. And we have our original apron, our proper apron, which we're just going to rename and call it the apron. So just going to move the accessories up. So we've got gloves, apron, boots, trousers. We'll move the eyes up to be with the rest of the body. And again, the beard should probably be up there as well. Doesn't really make a difference where you place them, because it's not like a layering system in Photoshop, but it's helpful to keep things organised. So let's turn everything on. We've got our eyes, we've got our beard, trousers, just turn that off, feet. And you can see we're starting to get something which looks a lot more like what we actually started planning out. So try and match them up a little bit more. Not that it matters too much. So let's get this boot in, and then we can start playing around with all the fun stuff. Can start doing some more defined muscles and other fine details. So let's get those boots done. Alrighty, let's get these boots done. First of all, I'm just going to make a save. There we go. Okay, so let's get these boots. We're just going to manipulate what we've got in terms of the feet. So we're just going to select the feet by Alt and clicking on them. Go into solo mode. And from here, we're just going to start editing what we've got. We're going to drop down to the lowest subdivision level. I'm going to turn on Polyframe 3D, so Shift and F rather. We've got symmetry turned on, so that's all good. Now I'm just going to start by hiding the toes. So Control Shift and clicking on them. I'll hide the toes for us. Obviously it doesn't seem to want to work on the other side because it's going by polygroup. But that's okay, we'll do it on one side and we'll just mirror it over as we did the last time. It's going to delete the higher resolution. We're then going to delete the hidden polygons, so now those toes are disappeared. Then we're just going to press close holes again. So now we get a solid sort of foot. Just going to hold down Shift and smooth that out a little bit. Just going to right click, hold down Shift and drag the Z intensity for the smooth brush down a bit. So now you get to see that we've got something that looks a little bit more like a foot. And I'm actually just going to duplicate these first of all. So I probably should have done this first. I'd recommend doing it first of all. The main reason being so I can actually figure out how big the boot needs to be, as we no longer have any feet there. Although we do have our original mesh, so just ignore that completely. We're just going to turn the original mesh on. I'm going to turn off solo mode. I'm just going to make sure that we've got the original mesh and only the feet turned on. Now we're going to turn on transparency and select the feet, and now we can kind of see what we've got to play around with. Just going to mirror this over to the other side. So once again, because I'm working on the right, I'm going to go to Deformation, press Mirror, then Geometry, Modify Topology, and then Mirror and Weld. So now I've got both on the same side. So now symmetry is going to work fine for us. So Whole point of doing this is so we can doing it with the original mesh turned on, so we can tell just how long the boots need to be. We might well dynamesh these a little bit later so we can play around with them a little bit more. I'm just going to drop the size of the move brush down. I'm just going to start bringing these out so they're a bit more booty. And as you can see, they're not quite what we're after so far. So they need to be a lot bigger, and we need to add a lot more to them. So this is a good time to dynamesh them. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's turn off polyframe. We'll put the see-through back down. We're going to dynamesh, and we're just going to see what happens when we hit it. See if we get enough resolution. Probably not. Let's just put that up to say 512. Hit dynamesh. That's better. Got something a bit more to play with there. So let's start bringing these up. Obviously it needs to be a lot higher. It's going to be big chunky boots. I'm just going to use the deformation menu and just going to inflate. Just going to make them chunkier for us. So we get a lot for free there. Just going to go back to geometry in case we need it. Just going to smooth them a bit. Let's tidy them up. I'm actually going to move them down a bit, so I'm grabbing the move tool from the transpose menu there. Just moving it down so we've actually got a sole on them. And everything's a little bit lumpy down the bottom, so I'm actually just going to drag it down a little bit further than I actually need. I'm going to hold down Control Shift. We're going to grab our trim curve brush, and we're going to cut that off. So now we've got a flat sole. So that's all good. Let's go back to our move brush and let's force this up a little bit more. We'll slice the top off of these as well, and then we can charge everything up and add a few details and things like that. Okay, so let's see how we're doing there. Let's turn the see-through off. Again, there needs to be a little bit bigger, so once again deformation and inflate, because if you recall we didn't really do much in terms of sculpting on the feet themselves, so we're kind of working with sort of a thinner mesh than really what we should be. It's not as chunky as we needed, so we can inflate those, smooth it out a bit, smooth the edges up here. Bring out the toe, make it a bit more rounded. Just going to remesh this now because we're going to have some triangles and things in there. So hold down Control, drag in the background. We'll get some more polygons to play with. And obviously these are going to be pretty sort of stylized boots. They're going to be very chunky. I imagine they're probably fur lined or something like that, who knows. So don't worry about the feet too much because we didn't change them or make them fit his body proportions. Hold down Control and Shift again, and we're going to grab our trim curve and cut the top off. Just going to remesh it, smooth it down a little bit, and from here we're going to get our select lasso. So we're going to hold down Control, click on the brush menu and choose Mask Lasso, and we're going to select the area that we actually want to pull out the sort of flaps from. So that should just about do it. Going to invert the selection, Control clicking on the background, and from there we're going to press inflate and remove the masking and remesh everything again by Control dragging on the background. Okay, so we've got some boots, quite chunky. They're not the best so far, but we're going to be working on them. We're going to be sculpting some things in, wrinkles and laces, all the good stuff. If we want to flare these bits out a little bit more, we can hold down Control, mask off these sections here, and just bring them out and down, so we get a bit of a shadow once it's when it's rendered, or create a bit of ambient occlusion when we're doing the maps, which will add a bit to the shading. There we go, let's just remesh it again. And we can tidy this up. We'll probably retopologize these boots, because they're going to be extremely messy to work on in their current form. As you can see, we're losing that little fold again, so I'm just going to undo those. And I'm just going to pull this down a little bit further. Okay, so that's fine. Let's turn everything back on. Let's go ahead and turn his trousers on. We've got his apron. There we go. So we've got some big chunky boots poking out from underneath there. I think that's pretty much the same sort of scale that we were going for. We've got his gloves, got his beard. And it's looking rather Viking-y, I think, if that's a term, which it probably isn't, but I don't care. So, let's see what we've got going on here. Let's turn his eyes back on. And let's turn off the original body and turn on the actual upper torso that we're going to be sculpting on. So here we have it, guys, our full figure with everything he needs. So this isn't going to be the only set of things that we have with him. I'm going to be creating a hammer, because what's a blacksmith without his hammer? So we'll be doing that afterwards, once we've kind of got a bit of an aesthetic down and stuff like that. We'll be adding a belt and things to his trousers, I imagine, or some form of body wraps, sort of cloth just wound around his waist or something like that. And we'll be generally adding more character and more eye-catching details as we go. So that's pretty much the end of this chapter. We've got everything we need, and everything that we have is in place. So I'll probably retopologize these boots when we actually get on to detailing them. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be focusing mainly on the body. So in the next chapter we're going to be focusing on the body itself. Going to be going over some basic anatomy. Going to be putting in some muscle definitions, muscle insertion points and things like that. We'll basically get that all detailed up to a level where we can move on to the rest and start bringing everything up to the same sort of detailed level. I think after that we'll probably go into more fine detailing, adding bits and pieces, extra accessories and such like that. And from there we'll see where it takes us. So that's the end of this one, guys. Come join me in the next chapter. Happy sculpting and take care.